Camille, whether we are sitting around tables or we are at conventions, homeschooling conventions, we get asked, how do you come up with an issue? Would you help us out?
I remember struggling with that too, reading a book and saying, I need an issue, and just having no place to go. But I learned something from Buck Holler that says that we can list characters that we've read about, 3 or 4 characters, and then that are in the story, and then 3 actions that each character chose to do. So if somebody fell off a ladder, we wouldn't use that because it wasn't he didn't ask for it. That just happened to him. So we want volitional acts that they chose to do. So he cooked pancakes. He sat in the kitchen. He talked to his daughter. I'm thinking of a folk tale. Father's peeling potatoes with his daughter. Somebody knocks on the door. So he did those 3 things.
Okay.
She peeled potatoes. She sat with her father. She
asked a question.
She went to the ball. I went to a dance at the end of the story. And then there are 3 suitors who show up at the door. So we list all the suitors, and then what did the first one do? What did the second one do? What did the third one do? And so then we pick one of those. We pick the character we want to think about and the action that he did that we want to think about. And that becomes the issue, whether he should have done that. So, but I think generating a list of characters and a list of actions is really helpful, because then it helps you see what your options are, and then you can pick the one you want the most.
And when I've done it with my students, I find that it's small retellings of the story as well. You know,
as you go through the chart, make the list.
As we just make the list, sometimes the kids will, oh, and did you notice that this and this and this happened and this happened, and I end up retelling the story.
I did this with a group of teachers one time at a school, and we kind of thought, okay, we can use, I think To Kill a Mockingbird was the book that we talked about. And by the time we listed all the characters and the actions, even the teachers who had said, I kind of don't remember that book, we all had refreshed our memories and we're ready to move on.
Yeah, just from that part. That's,
And it's so much more fun than a test.
It's true.
It's a great review of a whole book in the class, and you can tell who's read it and who hasn't if you make a character and action list. It's fun.
What I saw with my students building the character action list is it can take some practice, because as Camille, I think you mentioned, you know, if it was one of the Laura Ingalls Wilder stories, Nellie hit Laura, but it's listed under Laura, so it's more the student writes down more of a what happened to Laura, and not something that Laura did or chose to do. So that's something that teachers and parents may see when they begin this process. But I just have my students go back and I rethink it with them, and so they can hone that skill. At this part in the year, we're towards the very, very end. My students aren't doing character action lists at this point, but we kept them. I bet we kept them for 5 essays. That we were practicing, and sometimes one student needs more practice than the other, so we all practice together. I like issues that are specific, probably to a point of fault.
No, you go ahead with that, because I was going to say the same thing, because I had an interesting conversation with a level 2 teacher yesterday about that. So say what you're going to say. It's not to a fault. Camille
knows I feel like it is. I don't know, because I think it makes my grading easier or my assessing easier. I do think it helps the student. So I would offer this example. We were in the apprenticeship, we were reading the Iliad. There's crazy amount of things to choose from, of issues. You have so many characters and so many decisions that were being made. I always honed in on one simple action. For example, I wrote an essay on whether Athena should have blown strength into Diomedes, because Diomedes was in a battle. She comes down and she makes him stronger so he can really go to town on the other warriors. That's very specific, versus whether the gods should have interfered in the war. That's an issue that I see students being drawn to, because it's something really fun to think about. But when you do the issue that's very specific, those things about the gods interfering, they come into play. It's just in this little microcosm, which allows, I think, the students to practice with the tools more specifically. When students have mastered these tools and are comfortable and have internalized them, that's the point at which I think they can branch out. I've seen some science and history issues. And within that initial learning phase, I would say sticking to something specific, something from a character, one character, one action is going to be the most beneficial way to get you to mastery, so you can transfer these tools into something in a bigger thought idea.
I agree 100%. And then in my adult level 2 class yesterday, we talked about this, and we were using a practice issue from The Tempest about whether Stefano should be punished for disorderly conduct.
Okay.
And so we tried to think about disorderly conduct, but we realized it was a series of actions contained in that. And so when we changed it to be one specific action, then suddenly we had lots more ideas.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people say, I can't think of anything. Well, if you'll narrow what Google says too, narrow your search to broaden your results.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot to say about one thing, but when you have a group, you can't say the same things about it because not everything is true of the whole group. And so you can't say anything. And so if you say whether Joe and Bob should have gone to the store, it's better to just focus on one of them. And then Bob will, put John in, whether John should have gone to the store, and then he went with Bob and your Annie. Or whether he should have bought milk and okra, just say whether he should have bought milk and then put the okra in the Annie. And so to change it from a group of actions to one action is a good idea, from 2 people to 1 person. Yeah. And from vague to concrete.
That's specific, right?
Specific.
Whether Nellie should have hurt Laura.
Which time?
Right.
Or whether Anne should have hit Gilbert on the head with her slate. The issue should be whether Anne should have hit Gilbert. And then on the head goes in the Annie, with the slate goes in the Annie.
Once
students can identify the exact moment in time when it happened.
Yes.
Exactly. When and where.
Yeah. You have to be able to do that. And with a series of actions, it's not so hard. And with 2 people, it's 2 different places because he's in this chair and he's in that chair.
And over time, I have students who struggled or they just resisted that idea of the specificity. After they did it wrote a couple of essays, most of my students see the difference and appreciate that specificity. And I think sometimes parents, students, it's hard to trust, that am I really going to get an essay asking if he should have sat down at dinner?
Yeah.
You actually will. It will happen. And I don't know why I took that as law, but I did, and I ran with it.
But you should have, because I showed you yesterday. I mean, how we just had trouble yesterday with something vague. It causes trouble.
Well, and I would say that the little bonus to this, by having this as a regular part of the development of our issues, is it's a preparation for adjusting our verbs and realizing what's an active verb and a passive verb. Because whether Nellie should have hit Laura is active. Nellie's doing the hitting. But whether Laura should have been hit by Nellie is not. And so we wouldn't choose that for an issue because Laura didn't do anything in that, right?
To receive the action.
Yeah. And so that is a preparation for when they're going to go and learn how to edit their verbs.
True. Those sentences should look like the thesis sentence. Subject at the beginning. The actor at the beginning.
Actor.
Sorry, I meant actor.
Yeah, no.
It's not an existential subject, an actor. I learned that last week.